There's something you should really know about in screenwriting. There's something you have to know that I can tell you about screenwriting. Hang on. Did I just repeat myself? How's it? This is screenplay prep and repetition. I gave you 2 bits of information twice. It's the kind of thing the teacher or the father does to the child to really emphasize something and make sure that they get it, because the father or the teacher deems it so important and it has to be drilled in. Now, in terms of a teaching scenario or parenting, even something in the military, it's important that somebody understands the order, command, concern, issue, lesson, whatever it is. But that's it. It then comes across as a lesson. So the moment your screenwriting goes into the realm of repetition, you then turn it into a form of instruction, and the audience will end up feeling like they're being taught and that something's being hammered in. You can hammer things in the way of a detail visually, if necessary, if it's something that's preemptive, but when it comes to dialogue, to repeat, whether it's straight after the initial delivery or whether it's the same character repeating the story later on for the benefit of other characters, don't forget that the audience is sitting there and are now hearing that bit of information for the second time. Why is that bad? Boredom, essentially. And you have to realize that as you write your screenplay over months to years, that it is viewed on screen in anything between 80 minutes to 280. So that time is condensed for the viewer. Therefore, anything that is repetitious in terms of visuals or dialogue, they're going to notice because it's in a smaller span of time. And when you're writing, you forget that you wrote something 5 months ago that you're now repeating. But what I often find in client screenwriting is the repetition of story for the benefit of other characters. So, for example, you've got something that goes on with a character whereby, let's say, a law enforcement agency comes along and takes down the notes of what went on. You know, someone ran out the back door and stole my bike and ran down the road, and they left this sneaker behind. Cut to a few scenes later on in your script, and you've got that police detective now repeating that story to his superior officer in the police station. And he's saying, yeah, the guy ran out of the back, he stole the guy's bike, and he ran down the road and left the sneaker behind. Now we get to the court case, and the lawyer stands in the court and talks to the jury. And the guy ran out of the back of the house, stole the bike, headed down the road, and the sneaker came off and was left behind. Repetition. Whilst it's important, and whilst that would happen in real life, you need to find a way of divulging the information in portions. Maybe the detective at the beginning, when he's talking to the homeowner, you only show him writing down that the guy escaped on the bike. And if it's necessary, you have these 3 conversations at separate times about the occurrence. Then maybe the middle one, where the detective talks to the superior officer, maybe there he divulges, yeah, and he stole the bike. And then on the 3rd time with the court, the lawyer then picks out that, oh yeah, and the sneaker was dropped and left behind. You then paint a picture over time, and it's a bit more interesting for the audience. So maybe you work out that these bits of information aren't actually that integral to the plot, and maybe the second instance of the detective talking to his superior officer just isn't mentioned at all. It may not be vital. But the important thing is that you do not repeat these bits of information throughout your screenplay. Just be mindful of your audience and their attention span. You know, how many times has a friend sat with you in a bar and told you a story and you think, yeah, John, I've heard this one before. I know all about you and the whatever it is. It happens in real life and you react to it. Sometimes you let it go, maybe it's a funny story, but when it's the 3rd time, certainly you think, yeah, I've heard this before. I know I do it. When you're doing your final read-through, be mindful of those areas where you're repeating yourself, particularly when divulging information. Be wary that you're very precious as the screenwriter and thinking that this is very important information. It must therefore be rammed in there in various places throughout the screenplay. So be wary of what you think is important and just check that you aren't overplaying it. There will of course be instances where the repetition works or is warranted, but generally it isn't. So just be mindful of that, and the advantage of having someone else read your screenplay, particularly if they're not necessarily an industry professional, but someone who might be a relative who just reads it through from a story perspective, they can pick up on those areas of repetition, and you can potentially ask them to be mindful of repetition. In another video, I will talk about repeating words across sentences, but for now, I hope that was useful to you, and I will see you in the next one.